Welcome to Sleep, Sex, and Senility, where we explore the fascinating connections between sleep, oral health, cardiovascular health, hormones, brain health, and longevity. I'm Dr. Kathleen Carson, an oral systemic focused dentist.
And I'm Dr. Ellie Campbell, an integrative physician focused on prevention and healthy aging. Together, we bridge the worlds of dentistry and medicine to uncover how the health of your mouth may influence the health of your entire body.
If you enjoy these conversations, please like and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes, emerging research, and practical health insights, visit our website and sign up for our monthly newsletter using the link on our homepage.
Now, let's dive into today's conversation.
Before we begin, a quick note. This podcast is for educational purposes only and does not provide medical advice. Please consult your own healthcare provider for recommendations specific to you.
Welcome back to Sleep, Sex, and Senility, where we connect the dots between oral health, inflammation, sleep, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and everything in between. I'm Dr. Kathleen Carson, an oral systemic airway-focused dentist.
And I am Dr. Ellie Campbell, your favorite integrative physician. Today's episode is going to start with a statement that you have probably heard your entire life. Just floss more. It sounds simple and it sounds logical, but it honestly may not be the best advice for many people. Yeah, sometimes we have a myth of flossing. Here's something most people don't know. You've probably been told that flossing protects your heart. Flossing protects your gums. Flossing even protects your brain. But the evidence behind these universal recommendations to floss is actually quite a bit weaker than most people realize. We want to practice evidence-based strategies wherever we can, and the fact that there's not a lot of research surprises almost everyone because flossing has almost become a moral issue. Good patients floss and bad patients don't. But biology doesn't care about morality. Biology cares about outcomes.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the most important takeaway from today's episode, and the goal is not flossing. The goal is reducing inflammation between your teeth. That's it. Less bleeding, less bacterial accumulation, less inflammatory load. So healthier gums, that's our goal. The question shouldn't be, do you floss? The question is what's the best way for you to reduce the inflammation in your mouth? And the answer often depends on the person. And in reality, it's typically not flossing.
So here's the part that gets most people's attention. For decades, flossing was included in the dietary guidelines for Americans. And then in 2015, journalists held the government accountable. They asked the government to provide scientific evidence supporting this recommendation. And when the evidence was reviewed, there generally wasn't enough high-quality evidence to meet the government's own standards for inclusion. So as a result, flossing quietly disappeared from the federal guidelines. Now, before anyone throws their floss away, let's be very clear. Flossing was not shown to be ineffective. The government didn't say flossing doesn't work. What they said was that the evidence wasn't strong enough to support a universal recommendation for every person. And those are very different statements.
You know, that's interesting, though, because there are studies out there that show that patients that
Flossing makes a
floss,
difference.
yes, the flossing makes a difference. However, recent studies do show that flossing doesn't make a difference unless it's quote unquote supervised flossing. And that means somebody else is doing the flossing for you. For example, a dental professional. You know, I can floss for my partner and it's going to make a big difference. But leave that partner to floss on their own and it actually may not make a difference in the health of their mouth. And maybe because we're asking the wrong question. You know, it's like saying, you know, does a size 9 shoe fit everyone? No, of course not. We need to look at the individual person and what helps for their particular needs. Now, what has been found is people that flossing does help maybe have tighter contacts in their teeth, you know, or maybe some have larger spaces and they can get that floss in and contour it around the tooth and scrub up and down. Maybe it's a good way for some people to get around their implants. But in general, patients have arthritis. Some people have dry mouth. Some people have, spaces that aren't conducive to flossing. And inflammation isn't addressed adequately and well for actually the vast majority of patients who are simply flossing. There are better things out there that we can do. Water picking has been shown to be super, super effective. Those little Christmas tree shaped brushes, that you can go in between that where your tooth contact and your gum is and get in there. They're called interproximal brushes, and you can get in there and scrub. Those have actually proven to be very helpful for many, many patients. So there are a variety of tools out there that you should evaluate and ask your dentist, like, hey, what's actually going to get in there and get the best result for me in my particular situation? Maybe the patient has gum recession or big open spaces or periodontal disease or orthodontic changes, bridges, implants, can't use their hands like they used to. Those water irrigation devices and those interdental brushes can be much, much better. Soft picks. I actually came across one of those floss picks, which again, patients love them, those ones that are on the little hook that just have the line. But oftentimes it's just boop, boop, snap that floss in. That's not really doing anything to improve your oral health. But there is a brand I came across, and I don't know what it is, so I can't tell you. But on the end of it has one of those little brushes that you can go in between the teeth, so you can, do your little useless flossing to feel good and moral about it. But then go in and flip it around and take that brush and go in between and actually do something to help your inflammation in your mouth.
Yeah. So different tools for different mouths. I think
Yeah.
that's a great sentence. But, you know, where the research is showing, where the science is, starts to get pretty interesting. Because as researchers started to compare these different intradental cleaning tools, a pattern emerged. For patients who have open interdental spaces, these brushes often outperform floss when it comes to bleeding and inflammation. And by the way, those interdental brushes come in different sizes, right? Tight, really tight, not so tight. I forget all the verbiage that they use, but they're different sizes for different amounts of spacing between the teeth. But when you have wide spaces and you use these brushes, it way outperforms the floss to reduce bleeding and inflammation over time. In fact, several European periodontal organizations now recommend interdental brushes as the first choice when the anatomy allows. But again, this is not an anti floss message, it's a personalized care message. The question isn't what's the best tool, the question is what's the best tool for you? So let's talk about another connection that is often forgotten, which is that these mouth bacteria that we have, some of them are pathogens, some of them are bad actors, they don't belong there. One of those is a specific bacteria called Porphyromonas gingivalis, and we nickname him PG for short. And it has been shown to be found in the brains of people that have Alzheimer's dementia. So if you hear the phrase, floss your teeth to prevent dementia, well, that's really kind of an oversimplification. The more accurate statement would be something more like this. Reducing chronic oral inflammation may help to support long-term brain health. Reducing gum inflammation may reduce one source of inflammatory stress on the body, and clearing abnormal mouth bacteria can make an influence in reducing inflammatory stress as well. Reducing inflammation supports vascular health, and vascular health is important for brain health. Notice, none of those statements required floss. They require inflammation reduction. That's our target.
Yeah, and that's actually where I often surprise patients too. Sometimes the biggest driver of oral inflammation is not what you're cleaning with or how you're cleaning, but it's actually what's creating the inflammation in the first place. For example, chronic dry mouth, mouth breathing, sleep disordered breathing, maybe an unhealthy, imbalanced oral microbiome, low saliva flow. Certain medications can cause inflammation. Chronic nasal congestion can do that. So you can floss perfectly every night and still struggle. That would be very common because the floss isn't doing anything. So when you go into your dentist and your dentist blames you, hey, it doesn't look like you're flossing much. That's bad data. That's not even old science because the science was never there to support it. So we're often trying to treat the smoke while we're ignoring the fire. So the inflammation is really the root cause you should be addressing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings is, effort on the wrong tool isn't neutral. So one person actually told me one time, never confuse effort with results. So you may be putting all the effort in the world and not getting the results out that are expected. It's just because you're attacking the wrong thing. So if you're spending 10 minutes fighting with floss every night and you're missing most of the areas that actually need cleaning, that effort is not producing the results. You're not getting much benefit out of it. So sometimes it's a 1 minute interdental brush that Dr. Campbell just told you about that does a much better job. Sometimes it's one of those water flossers, the water irrigators that does a better job. Sometimes it's treating your dry mouth that's going to give you the biggest improvement. The solution doesn't always have to be more effort. It just might be a better strategy, and you just might need some help identifying what that strategy might be for you.
Yeah. So let's take two patients. Patient number one has healthy gums, but very tight contacts between their teeth. For them, floss is probably a fantastic choice. But patient number two is a more complex dental patient. They have gum recession, they've already had two implants, they have larger spaces between their teeth, and they have chronic dry mouth from the prescription medications that I gave them for antidepressant or blood pressure. So that same floss may be completely inadequate for patient number two. They have different anatomy, they have different biology, they need a different solution. And that's personalized medicine and that's personalized dentistry. Can I take an aside, Dr. Carson, and ask you if I'm going to use floss, what is really the best way for me to use it? Do you like those, disposable string flossers on a stick? Do I need to be using the string that I tie off and wrap around my fingers? If I'm
You
gonna
know,
use floss, which is the best that you like or teach, and how do you use it?
Well, if you're going to use floss, I think ultimately the best one is the one you're going to use. If I had my druthers, it would be floss that you can wrap around your finger and maybe has a little bit of grip to it. Because if you're going to get the best benefit out of it, you not only just you don't just go up and down between your teeth. You go down and wrap the floss around the contour of the tooth and go up and down. So you're basically scrubbing the side of the tooth, and then you flip the angle and do the same for the adjacent tooth. The going up and down in between the teeth isn't really doing much for you. But that being said, a lot of people have dexterity issues. They can't do that with their floss. The sticks, with some effort, you can get some results out of it. But again, typically that's not my take home care recommendation. And a lot of times people are relieved when I take away that burden from them and tell them, you know what? Hey, you actually don't have to floss, because 9.9 out of 10 times, I am going to find a better tool for that patient to get better results for them. You don't want to lose sight of that real target. So, you know what? A takeaway from me is going to be this: just floss more from a dentist is just flat out lazy advice. What really needs to be done is to evaluate what your patient needs to reduce that inflammation in their mouth, whether it's home care strategies or maybe it's not something they're not doing at all. It's something else that's causing these results in their body. So you
Yeah.
got to match the tool to the mouth in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. I am spending a lot of time this year trying to help my patients reduce their toxic burden.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I've been paying attention to is what is the floss made of? And a lot of our our extra glide flosses are covered with Teflon, and that's a forever chemical. That's a PFAS. And so if you can avoid it, I do like to avoid coated flosses unless they're coated with charcoal and xylitol. I think that's a good strategy to help reduce or improve your flossing capacity without adding extra toxins. But, in general, we just really never want to lose sight of the target. And the target isn't the floss, the target is less inflammation. So, less inflammation between the teeth means less inflammation in the body and in the arteries. And this potentially means less inflammation burden on the heart and the brain over time.
Yeah. So at your next dental visit, ask a simple question. What interdental cleaning tool is best for my mouth? Not your spouse's mouth, not your friend's mouth, not every other mouth that dentist has seen that day, but specifically your mouth.
Yeah, and if you're dealing with medical issues like dry mouth, mouth breathing, snoring, untreated sleep apnea, or chronic gum inflammation, don't stop at the symptom. Ask what's driving it, because the biggest gains always come from addressing the root cause. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're dropping new episodes every Tuesday. I'm Dr. Ellie Campbell.
And I'm Dr. Kathleen Carson.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Sleep, Sex, and Senility. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast with a friend.
Visit our website at sleepsexandsenility.com to sign up for our monthly newsletter using the link on our homepage. New episodes drop every Tuesday.
Until next time, keep connecting the dots, and remember, what happens in your mouth doesn't stay there. I'm Dr. Ellie Campbell.
And I'm Dr. Kathleen Carson.
Nanoverse Media, making the world smaller.